All right, let's jump right in. When we think about luxury hospitality, we think about that personal human touch, right? So it might seem a little strange to talk about artificial intelligence, but what we're going to explore today is how AI isn't replacing that human touch. It's actually making it better, more consistent, and way more resilient.
But let me ask you this. How do you practice for a crisis? I mean, really think about it. In a five-star hotel, everything hinges on getting those guest interactions just right, especially when things go sideways. So how on earth are staff supposed to practice for a super stressful, totally unpredictable situation without a real live guest in front of them? It's a real paradox, isn't it? How do you practice the unpredictable?
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. We're not talking about simply following a script or a checklist. Nope, it's a true art form. It takes quick thinking, real emotional intelligence, that grace under pressure. And those are skills that are, frankly, almost impossible to teach in a classroom, and even harder to practice when you're in a high-stakes moment where every single word counts.
So here's the bottom line. You just can't throw new staff into the deep end and hope for the best. It only takes one poorly handled complaint, just one awkward response, and poof, you could lose a loyal guest forever. The risk to the hotel's reputation, a reputation they've worked so hard to build, is just massive. It's a huge gamble, or at least it always has been. Until now.
Okay, so before we jump into the really cool new stuff, let's take a quick look back. To really get why this is such a huge leap forward, we need to understand the old way of doing things and why, frankly, it just doesn't cut it anymore.
You know the traditional method, right? Role-playing with a manager. And look, it has some pretty big problems. First off, it takes up a ton of a manager's time. Plus, it's really tough for them to be completely objective. And let's be real, everyone knows it's fake. The pressure isn't there, the stakes feel low, and the feedback you get, it can be totally different depending on which manager is running the session. It's just inconsistent.
So, if the old way is kind of broken, what's the new way? Well, this is where it gets exciting. We're seeing pioneers, like the Europe Hotel School London, completely flipping the script. They're using technology to solve this very human problem, and they're doing it in a way that's consistent and can be scaled up.
And the whole thing is built around this core idea, a safe failure environment. It's exactly what it sounds like, a space where it's not just okay to make mistakes, it's actually encouraged. You can try out that tricky de-escalation tactic, you can test a new phrase, and if it doesn't work, so what? No harm done. You just learn from it, hit reset, and go again. It takes away all that fear, the fear that really gets in the way of learning.
So what's it actually like to be in one of these simulations? Let's pull back the curtain and look at the tech from CPL Learning that's making all of this happen.
It's all based on this feedback loop that's, well, it's both really simple and incredibly powerful. Here's how it works. First, you're put into a challenging scenario. Then, you actually talk to a virtual digital guest. Now, the AI isn't just hearing your words, it's analyzing your tone, your choice of words, even your empathy. And then, and this is key, you get instant, actionable feedback. No waiting around for a manager to review it. You know right away what went well, what didn't, and, most importantly, why. So imagine this scenario. A virtual guest is upset. They say, my room isn't ready, and I have a meeting in 30 minutes. Oh man, that's a classic, right? A real pressure cooker situation. We've all been there, either as the guest or the employee. They're stressed. You feel like your hands are tied. Every single word you say from this point on is critical. It's the perfect test.
And here is where it gets really brilliant. This digital guest isn't static, it's dynamic. It reacts to you. So if you get defensive and say something like, well, sir, check-in isn't until 3, the avatar will actually get more agitated. But if you lead with empathy, something like, wow, that sounds incredibly stressful. Let me see what I can do for you right now. The guest starts to calm down. It's a direct reflection of the tone and empathy you bring to the conversation.
Okay, so you go through dozens of these simulations. What happens? What's the end result? Well, it's so much more than just memorizing a few good lines. It's about fundamentally rewiring your instincts for when the pressure is on.
And this isn't just mindless repetition, it's a method called deliberate practice. Every time you go through a scenario, it's targeted. The AI feedback might point out a specific weakness. Maybe it's your opening line, or maybe it's the tone of your voice when you start to feel stressed. You can then practice that one specific thing over and over until it just becomes second nature.
And that's the whole goal here, building conversational muscle memory. It's just like a musician practicing scales, so their fingers just know where to go without thinking. After you've done enough of these realistic simulations, that perfect, empathetic response just becomes automatic. In the heat of the moment, you don't have to search for the right words. You just say them.
So what does all of this mean for the hotel, for the business? The impact is huge. Your staff feels way more confident and a lot less anxious. The guest experience becomes consistently amazing no matter who's working the front desk, and that in turn protects the brand's reputation and builds the kind of deep guest loyalty that keeps people coming back year after year.
What it really comes down to is this. It's a total transformation. You're going from hoping your staff can handle the pressure to knowing they can. You're moving customer service from a reactive, high-stakes gamble to a proactive, confident, and polished performance.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? We've seen how this completely changes the game for hospitality. But what about other fields? Think about a doctor who has to deliver difficult news, or a lawyer in a tough negotiation, or even a manager giving a tricky performance review. It makes you wonder, what other critical human skills are out there, just waiting for their own revolution in practice?